We've got this book on Austrian wine in front of us, but it's clear this goes way beyond just, swirling and sniffing, right?
Absolutely. This is about uncovering the real story behind the labels, the history, the people, the culture, woven into every bottle.
A deep dive then. And we're talking ancient roots too, right? I
Yeah.
mean, most folks probably don't think of Austria and think, oh yeah, wine powerhouse.
You'd be surprised. Austrian wine history stretches back almost as far as the big names France, Italy, you name it. We're talking serious lineage.
The book even says it was the Romans who got the ball rolling like 2,000 years ago.
Yeah.
Who knew the Danube was basically a vineyard superhighway back then?
Well, gotta hand it to the Romans. They were practical. Good terroir, efficient transport, that's how they did it. But what's so fascinating is that Roman influence. It laid the foundation for how Austria divides its wine regions even today. These boundaries, they're not random lines on a map, oh no. They're steeped in centuries of tradition, meticulously preserved.
Which makes even more sense when the book jumps ahead. And get this, the church becomes like the ultimate wine connoisseur in medieval times.
Yep.
Monks debating vintages alongside scripture. Now that's an image.
It really highlights how ingrained wine was in everyday life back then. Monasteries weren't just spiritual centers, they were centers of knowledge. And that included viticulture, the science of grapes and winemaking. They were the ones who upheld those strict vineyard boundaries, ensuring quality and a real sense of place, what we call terroir today. And that dedication, it's still at the heart of Austrian winemaking today.
But traditions, well, they get challenged sometimes. And wow, did things get a shakeup back in 1985. The book calls it a full-blown scandal rocked the wine world. What exactly happened?
Picture this. 1985, Austrian wine is having its moment. It's gaining international recognition. People are excited. Then, bam! Diethylene glycol, that chemical found in antifreeze, yeah, that was found in some Austrian wines. And not just a tiny accidental amount, we're talking deliberate adulteration, all to make the wine sweeter, rounder, more appealing.
Hold on, you're saying this wasn't an accident. This was intentional fraud. That's crazy.
It was a huge blow, not just to Austria's reputation, but to consumer trust in the entire industry. People were outraged, and rightfully so.
Talk about a gut punch to the industry. So how do you come back from something that huge, that damaging?
It was a turning point, that's for sure. The scandal forced Austria to take a long, hard look in the mirror. And the result? A complete overhaul, stricter regulations than ever before, rigorous testing, a real emphasis on showcasing the unique terroir of each region. All about rebuilding trust, you see.
So from this ashes situation, you get this whole new era of Austrian wine.
Yeah.
And it sounds like they leaned into what makes them special, right?
Yeah.
Which, hey, speaking of special, the book dives into the different regions
You look
in the Washoe Valley.
Stunning.
Yeah.
Just sounds stunning. It's iconic. And for good reason. Picture this. You've got these steep, terraced vineyards, almost impossibly perched, running right along the Danube River. I mean, we're talking UNESCO World Heritage Site here. Not just for the views, but for the centuries of viticulture that shaped it.
And Riesling, that's the big name there, right? The book mentioned it.
Oh, absolutely. Watch our Rieslings. Known for this incredible purity, minerality, and they age like a dream. But don't overlook their Gruner Veltliner. That's the other star.
Which, speaking of, this book calls Gruner Eat Grape of Austria. What's the deal with this one? Why is everyone so into it?
Sommeliers love it, and I'll tell you why. It's incredibly food-friendly. Think spicy, think Asian cuisine, anything with a bit of heft to it. Gruner cuts through fat with this bright acidity, but it's got this texture, this complexity underneath that just sucks you in.
Okay, you've sold me. Washoe Gruner is officially on my list. But the book also talks about Burgenland calls it the Wild West of Austrian winemaking. That just sounds like a whole other vibe, doesn't it?
Oh, completely. Burgenland is where Austria throws a little fire into the mix. Rolling hills, warmer temps, and the reds. Bold. We're talking big, beautiful reds.
It calls out Blaufränkisch specifically.
Yeah.
What's the story with this grape? I'll admit, it's a mouthful to say.
Blaufränkisch is having a real moment, and for good reason. It makes these expressive wines. I'm talking dark cherry, spice notes. Sometimes you even get this earthiness. Perfect with like a hearty stew, something grilled.
It's just amazing how much variety there is in such a small country. It's like every corner of Austria has its own wine story to tell, its own personality. But you're right, it's more than just dirt and grapes, isn't it? The book really hammers home this point. There's culture woven into every bottle.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Austrian wine culture, it's all about this word, Gemütlichkeit, this feeling of warmth, of good company, good food, good times, just enjoying life's simple pleasures.
And what better way to get that vibe than at a Heuiger? Their whole concept is just so cool.
Horgers are basically these awesome little taverns, often run by winemaking families, and you get to sample the latest vintage, often with some classic Austrian dishes on the side.
It's like the ultimate welcome mat, you know.
Sure.
You're not just tasting wine, you're tasting a whole culture.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
But we've got to talk about the future, right? The book mentions this new wave of Austrian winemakers kind of shaking things up.
Yeah, there's this new generation that's pushing boundaries while still respecting the traditions, you know? They're experimenting with biodynamic practices, keeping things natural in the cellar, and even rediscovering these old, almost forgotten grape varieties. It's really cool to see.
So it's like they're adding their own verses to this, like epic Austrian wine ballad, you know?
Exactly. Building on what came before, but with their own fresh take. And the world's definitely taking notice. People are curious, excited to see what Austrian wine will do next.
It's funny, right? You think of those like classic famous wine regions, but
Yeah.
Austria still has this air of discovery to it. I swear, this book has me ready to book a flight, pack an extra suitcase just for like corkscrews and go.
You absolutely should. There's something truly special about experiencing these wines right at the source, you know? The vineyards, the food, the whole vibe. You can't replicate that.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the main takeaway you want to leave with our listener about Austrian wine? What's the big aha moment?
Don't write it off. Austrian wine, it's more than just a drink. It's a reflection of a place, its history, a whole way of life. It's got the quality, the traditions, but there's also this thread of innovation, excitement running through it. Honestly, there's a whole world waiting to be discovered in just one glass.
Couldn't put it better myself. So listener, next time you're looking for a wine adventure, skip the usual suspects and grab a bottle of Austrian. You might just be surprised at what you find. And hey, don't be afraid to venture beyond the Gruner Veltliner.
Here, here, to new discoveries.